Alright, what's up guys? Welcome. Let's go play some Minecraft. Alright, so drugs. What about drugs? Basically, we talk about drugs like it's just one thing, it's one substance. We're like, "Oh yeah, that person is on drugs and all that." But drugs is just so much more, you know? There's so many different types of drugs and I feel like it's not really fair to categorize them as just like this one thing. Where it's just about drugs and it's just because there's so many different types of drugs. There's really horrible, addictive, dangerous drugs like heroin, for example, and then there's drugs that are barely even drugs, like weed, for example, because uh, not addictive, not dangerous at all, and pretty much all the negative things surrounding weed has been proven wrong by scientists because it's basically just a bunch of old propaganda from the 60s, stuff like that. But even though the world is getting better for pot smokers, it still has a lot of work left because we still look at drugs really weird. We think it's weird, we think it's wrong, um, but most of the people that think it's wrong and think it's weird to do drugs, they have no experience at all and have never tried it themselves. Which is interesting because that means that we live in a world where people keep speaking about things, they keep expressing their opinion about things that they basically don't know shit about, and that's a world that sounds pretty stupid because if you should if you're gonna speak about something, you should at least like know some stuff about it first. Do your research. So I'm so tired of people just being like, and especially about weed because uh, there's a lot of debates about weed all over the world because it's starting to get legalized in the states and in Canada it's already legal. So of course there's gonna be a lot of debates all over the world, and people are like, they try to explain to me why it's bad, but they can't explain to me why it's bad because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're just like, it makes you stoned, and I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, that's kind of the point. Um, but see, the thing is, they don't know what they're talking about because they're just like doing like their parents, their parents told them that drugs was wrong, and my parents told me don't do drugs like most parents. So they've got this picture in their head where they think like all drugs are basically the same thing, and all drugs are really really bad. But it's not black or white, right? It's very very gray. This subject is extremely gray because we have drugs like weed that has been proven kind of good in some cases when it comes to medical stuff. Also, probably psychological stuff too, because some sources claim it can help with depression, which it probably could. I don't see why not. It makes you happy, it makes you laugh, it makes you hungry. So it probably could help with depression, but we still, or at least in the countries that it's still illegal, and we don't talk about it a whole lot, mainly European countries, they still look at weed like it's like this really like heavy drug, like amphetamine, cocaine, and I'm just like, they don't know shit about this thing, right? Because people always told me when I was younger, like, don't smoke weed, don't do drugs, all that stuff. Uh, and I was like, I was exactly like them. I was thinking that weed was this super dangerous, heavy drug that only real junkies use. Then I smoked weed for the first time, and I was like, you know what? This is not dangerous at all. I can feel in my body how not dangerous this is because, uh, well, first off, it wasn't addictive. Like the next day, I wasn't thinking about weed at all. And I was just like, oh, well, it's nice to try and stuff like that. Of course, I did start smoking eventually, pretty regularly, but I'm not gonna say that it's an addiction because it has never been an addiction. an addiction is something where you can't really stop, right? Because you just feel too damn bad when you stop something. Like alcoholism, it's basically when you stop using a substance and you just feel like shit because you stopped using a substance. Well, that's not the deal with weed, because when I stop using weed, I'm just like, oh, well, I guess I'm not smoking anymore. And that's about it. So you can't really say that it's an addiction, um, or drug abuse if there is no addiction whatsoever. So it's basically just me using weed because I like it, and it has nothing to do with an addiction. Uh, so that's why we shouldn't look at weed like it's some type of dangerous, heavy drug. Then we have other drugs, of course, that are way heavier, way more dangerous, like, all the heavy ones. I think everybody know at this point what the heavy drugs is, which is basically, heroin, cocaine, all that stuff. All that horrible stuff that you should never try because it should stay illegal. What should not stay illegal, what should actually be legalized, is pot and probably some psychedelic drugs too. Probably why? Well, psychedelic drugs are basically not as addictive as the heavy drugs. Sure, you might hallucinate and see some weird things, and when it comes to psychedelics, I don't talk a whole lot about it because I don't know too much about it. And I know that this is very unusual for people nowadays, but I live by the rules that if I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to talk about it, okay? So, if I don't know anything about a subject, I'm not gonna speak about it because I don't know anything about it. So, and that's very very unusual in the world we're living in. We're living in a world where people on the internet speak about all kinds of stuff that they don't know anything about, and in real life, not only on the internet, of course. Uh, and that just truly angers me. It truly bothers me that people tend to speak so much about a bunch of things that they have no idea. They have no idea how it works or anything like that. They just talk about it because they have an opinion that is not based off of anything other than what they've heard from their parents and what they've learned, and in their life experience. You can't trust life experience 100%, right? Because you might have lived a life that never allowed you to experience some things. For example, some people have grown up in a family completely without drugs, maybe even completely without alcohol, which means that those people never experience what it's like. And if they haven't experienced what it's like and they don't know how it works, what it does, or what it's made out of, why should they just be allowed to speak about it openly, like there's some sort of uh, like they actually know, like they're an expert basically, because that's what people do. They speak about it, especially weed, because now when it's legalized, we have basically the experts versus the really stupid people who think they're the experts. Um, and the really stupid people are people that never experienced marijuana. They probably never smoked in their entire life, and still they're just sitting here trying to teach people that have smoked and know that it's not dangerous and it's not addictive. They're trying to teach them that it is in fact dangerous and addictive, and it just it's actually kind of funny in my opinion how that works, because it's a kind of a crazy world. It's a world with a lot of flaws, and we have this system with free speech, well, in most countries anyway, which is a good thing for the most part. But of course, we have to understand that when we have free speech and everybody could say pretty much anything because they're allowed to, there's going to be a lot of idiots that try to convince people about things, sort of like me. The only difference is that I have kind of done a bit of research about weed, about psychedelics. That's why I'm not talking too much about heavy drugs, because I haven't done too much research on those things. I mean, I've done some, and I've known people, and I know for a fact that really heavy drugs is a bad thing for you. because I've seen what it has done to some very good friends of mine. Uh, the difference is weed because I haven't actually known anybody uh, whose life has been completely destroyed because of this one plant. It just doesn't exist. And, you know, everybody knows at this point that nobody can die from weed. It's nothing it's not a fatal drug at all. Um, so it's interesting that there's still so many people in the world that tries to keep it illegal. Well, mainly it's probably because of economic reasons, right? Because people like money, and some companies don't like the idea of weed being legalized because they make more money if it's illegal. You know, stuff like that. Basically, it's bullshit. But that's probably the reason that some people want it to stay illegal. Also, there's of course people that genuinely think that it is a bad thing, and you know, I've talked to those people, and it's very interesting, sort of how they think, because their logic is it's very flawed. It's basically they have no experience about the substance at all. They don't know anything about weed. They just they have some experience, I guess, from what people have told them, and that's about it. And why should people listen to those kind of people? Because that's just straight stupid, in my opinion. We should listen to experts. We should listen to scientists, and we shouldn't really listen to anybody else, because you know, why would we? We want to get as close to the truth as possible, and we want, at least most of us want, what's best for society and what's best for the people. And I can't I just can't find the logic in how, you know, lying and uh, believing in old propaganda and stuff like that, how that could be something good for the people. uh, and you know, try to keep something illegal that has again and again and again been proven not dangerous, not fatal, um, not causing violence, or not causing, you know, teenager. We always talk about teenagers, like rebellions and, you know, smoke weed and all that. That's what teenagers do. Well, yeah, most of us do anyway. But when it becomes illegal, teens are probably, or when it becomes legal, teens are probably going to be like, you know what, this is not fun anymore. Weed is not fun because it's legal, and that makes it boring. At least that's what I think is going to happen. Uh, because there's just a feeling, you know, when you do something that's slightly illegal, you're like, wow, this is so exciting because it is slightly illegal. And oh shit, I just jumped out of my minecart. But when it's legal, it's like, oh yeah, this thing is legal. It's like with alcohol, right? Most teenagers drink sometimes during their teens, but it's not like it's the main thing about, like, we don't talk about teenagers drinking too much. It's usually about drugs, right? And weed being a gateway drug and all that. That's why teens shouldn't smoke weed. But it's not really a gateway drug, right? Because some people, first off, some people just stick with weed and don't even want to try anything else. Then there's the people that do want to try other things, but they're already too far gone if they want to try other things. If they're thinking about trying things like heavy drugs, if you're like sitting at home thinking about, oh, I wonder what it's like to try cocaine, uh, then you're already too far gone. That's not because of weed, because that's because of your mindset, basically how you look at drugs. You don't look at it like it's something wrong, and you're probably curious. You want to try stuff, right? So that has nothing to do about like, and plus, if weed was illegal, how would it even be a gateway drug? Because you wouldn't be able to get heavier drugs when buying weed. That's the thing with it being illegal. You buy weed because it's illegal. You buy it from a dealer. Dealers sometimes have heavier stuff, which might make you curious and might make you want to try heavier stuff. So, you know, that people's arguments for why it should stay illegal, they're very flawed. Their arguments are pretty much bullshit and very easy to prove wrong. And there's a spider in my ceiling, and that spider in the ceiling is kind of uncomfortable because it's like right above my head, and what the fuck? But yeah, despite that, you get my point, right? People try to do a bunch of bullshit because they don't know any better, and I think our job is, at least in the community, in the movement that wants to get weed legalized all over the world, our job is to get people to understand why they're idiots when they want to keep it illegal. I would love to actually like just properly go and debate with someone. Of course, I would have to do more research because even though I have done some research, there's still flaws in my arguments, obviously, because one person can't do all the research in the entire world. But I would like to do more, So it's yeah, that's an interesting thing. So what am I doing with this wheat, by the way? This wheat, it's wheat, by the way. It's not weed. Even though I kind of wished it was weed, because that would be kind of awesome. All right. Yeah. Then we have the whole thing about psychedelics too, which is it's it's a complicated subject, right? Because psychedelics, they're more serious than weed. Like it's more dangerous, but at the same time, it's not really addictive. If you compare it to really heavy drugs, so it's an interesting thought if that would be made illegal, all psychedelic drugs. I'm kind of for it because I don't really see a problem with psychedelics. Like I see a problem with the heavy drugs like heroin, for example, cocaine and those heavy drugs. I see problems with that because they could potentially make you violent if you're that kind of person. So that's a whole thing. You should probably stay away from that if you could. And but psychedelics is another thing. That's basically about the experience. You want to experience something psychedelic. Usually, it doesn't have anything to do with violence. At least not when you when you want to try it. Curiosity reasons or whatever. Why is there a sheep outside? What the? Oh god. Anyway, I feel like people who try heavier drugs do it because they have maybe they have no life, maybe they have grown up in that kind of family that does stuff like that. I'm not really sure why people would try heavier drugs, but I do know why people would try psychedelics because it's hella it's hella a lot of fun, um, and it doesn't really make you super crazy violent and makes it so you can't sleep. At least not mild psychedelics, if that's even a thing, which would probably be like mushrooms, LSD, stuff like that. Now I haven't tried those stuff myself, but uh fuck, that spider is like right above my head right now. That is I don't like spiders. They interrupt me. They interrupt my thoughts when I'm trying to think. And that's why spiders suck anyway. Uh but yeah, I think it's important to not categorize all drugs as like the same thing because that's just stupid. That's just childish to categorize all drugs as bad. Just think about drugs like, oh, all drugs are bad. All drugs should be illegal. That is like so, 1960s because we know better nowadays. We know that some things could be used for medical purposes, and we know other things probably couldn't be used as for medical purposes. And we know that today because we have done some research on stuff like that. We didn't know that back in the day. That's why we shouldn't keep using those old arguments because they're not relevant anymore, of course. But some people still think that those arguments are very, very relevant and that those people back in the 60s that tried to keep weed and other stuff like that legal, they think that they're being the smart ones here, which is just simply ridiculous. By the way, do I have an anvil anywhere? I kind of need an anvil too, because I got a horrible pickaxe and I kind of need to do stuff with the anvil. Oh, great. Now I have a very good pickaxe, which is very sexy. Sexy pickaxe. And it's night, so I gotta sleep again. But yeah, so we talked a little bit about psychedelics, a little bit about drugs. Of course, I'm an amateur when it comes to talking about it. I'm not a professional talker. I don't even know what that means, but you know, I'm not an expert. I just like to talk about it because some things bothers me. The way people look look at drugs kind of bothers me. How there's so little knowledge regarding drugs. It's the same freaking arguments. It's the same thing where people are just like, oh well, my parents told me never to do this, and therefore it must be absolutely correct. But yeah, we should question more. Grown-ups definitely does not question enough. Grown-ups are just like they don't question stuff. They're just like they accept society as it is and don't question stuff, which is wrong because grown-ups should question things. They're the grown-ups. They're the ones who can change the world. Well, kids can too. They really wanted to, but it's easier if you're a grown-up. Yeah. Anyway, oh fuck, that spider is gone. That that spider. Okay, that is very uncomfortable because it was just above my head and now it's gone, and that makes me really uncomfortable. So what the fuck, dude? Okay, okay. Well, that I wish I could show you guys where this spider is right now, because this spider. You know what? You know what? I'm gonna end the stream because this spider is ruining my entire life. I'll see you guys when I've killed the spider. But yeah, we talked about drugs and stuff like that, and yeah, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this short little stream right now. I gotta go kill the spider. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Uh, um, what what's going?